Thank you so much. Thank you everyone. And it's so lovely to see some very friendly faces, so thank you all for taking the time. So you're very welcome. So I'm speaking today on iron deficiency in pregnancy, causes, cases and conclusions. I'd firstly like to thank the All Ireland Midwifery and Maternity Forum for the opportunity, and particularly to my sponsors Active Iron, but more on that later. So, a little bit about me. As Sue said, I'm a midwife, childbirth educator and hypnobirth practitioner. I write, I speak, I present a podcast. I'm a passionate educationalist. I'm passionate about disseminating evidence-based information to not only families, pregnant women, but also colleagues. I think that that is how we push midwifery forward, but also push the care of the families that we look after to the absolute forefront. And also, being sponsored by Active Iron, it's an Irish company, and I think people forget that sometimes, so, and a brilliant story about that as well. So what I'll be talking about today, so an outline of iron deficiency in pregnancy. I know we're all familiar with it, but sometimes we do forget the basic biology. Effects on mother and baby, which are absolutely huge and have huge implications, not only for this pregnancy, future pregnancies, health and well-being, but also for the little babies. And I think sometimes we forget about little babies become bigger people. Sample cases, so who is particularly at risk? And in a time when there are changing diets and changing nutritional needs, who in particularly should be watching out for that might be at risk of a deficiency? Diet and supplementation. What are the issues with it? What are the problems with it? Why diet alone isn't the only solution, and some of the problems with some of the supplements that are currently taken. And bioavailability and of iron and absorption. I used to hate biochemistry, but it's actually essential in midwifery practice to understand how we actually absorb the things that we recommend or tell the women in our care to take. But really, really interesting is iron and how it actually works within the body, and our conclusions, and hopefully not too many mean questions. So iron in pregnancy. The requirements of iron in pregnancy, firstly, it is an essential micronutrient. It is essential for, obviously, iron production, hemoglobin, but it's also for our immune systems, for cell division. It is totally essential. And within pregnancy, there's a 2 to 3-fold increase in iron requirements. Within that, it's compounded by hemodilution. Remember, day one, your blood volume increases by about 30 to 50%, but the red blood cells only increase by about 33%. So there's a natural hemodilution that happens in pregnancy, and that happens at no other time in the lifespan of a human. 50% increase in blood volume, but only 33%. So the CDC in the States recommended 27 milligram iron daily intake in pregnancy, and WHO would recommend much higher at about 30 to 60 milligrams. So the big thing to understand is deficiency is progressive. What happens is that firstly you have depletion in the iron storage, so the storage gets depleted first. So somebody might present in not reaching the thresholds for a deficiency at all, but might already, prior to pregnancy, actually have a deficiency as an issue. And eventually, when you get to stage 3, then you have iron deficiency anemia. But there is a staging to it, and it is very much progressive. And that's from the WHO. It's a global issue. It is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world, estimated to affect 1/3 of the world's population, affecting 800 million women and infants. And unlike other deficiencies, it isn't just about developing countries. It affects industrialized and first world countries very much so. Middle or higher income countries are also at significant risk. It's a huge economic cost. I tried to get a figure of it, and I actually just couldn't get one figure. But the billions and billions and billions that are associated due to illness, death, and also reduced productivity. So some of the stats in the UK, so it's reckoned that between 24 and up to 50% of women that present might already be deficient. So the current guidelines, so we do an FBC at booking and at 28 weeks. Anemia is defined as, we all know these. The problem with these amounts, and why there's a huge amount of research at the moment, is that these were taken on non-pregnant populations. So the thresholds mightn't actually be accurate. And we all know people that present with a deficiency and are certainly symptomatic long before some of the thresholds might be reached. So there's a lot of research on it. So, I mean, they're the guidelines that we have, and the latest guideline came out just in October 2019. And while there's more research that needs to be done, they're the values that we work at. Serum ferritin, which checks the actual iron stores. So if you have someone that is particularly at risk, then you should be checking the serum ferritins, absolutely. That gives a much better look as to where the deficiency is and who might possibly be becoming more deficient during their pregnancy. So the risks are massive. So we obviously have depletion of iron stores and ferritin levels, impaired hemoglobin production, then we reach anemia in pregnancy, then we've increased susceptibility and severity of infections, poor cognition and low productivity, which we all see in our postnatal mums, increased risk of maternal mortality and morbidity. The statistics are kind of startling that with pretty much every single morbidity and mortality, if you have a deficiency there, it makes it so much worse. And then we have the fatigue, shortness of breath, palpitations, depression, low mood and irritability. And there's another body of research looking at iron deficiency in relation to statistics with regards perinatal depression, which is a very interesting kind of combination. So baby iron deficiency, obviously in the first 3 months of life, low birth weight, preterm birth, and all the rest of mortality and morbidity. So who is at risk? Low stores before pregnancy. So we know a lot of women don't really go to the doctor that often. So the first time they might have even gotten a full blood count is at that booking visit. Previous history of deficiency, but again, they mightn't actually be putting down their symptoms to an actual deficiency. They might just think they're tired anyway. Obviously, if they have a pre-existing blood condition like thalassemia, young women. So if you have a cohort of young women, they are particularly susceptible, and as I'll go through in my cases in a little bit, particularly because they tend to have poorer diets than more higher education and older women. Gut disorder, IBS, celiac, and we're seeing more and more of that, and eating disorders. And somebody mightn't disclose that to you, so that's very important to be aware of. Restricted diet, we can see more and more vegetarians and vegans. So the sources of dietary iron are from heme sources, which would be our meat, fish, poultry, and then the non-heme, which are the pulses. Within taking large amounts of that, there are actually things within the food which can stop the absorption and can be a problem. So with people on restricted diets, it can be incredibly difficult for them to get their iron intake from anything other than supplementation. So case 1, 18 years old, first pregnancy, poor diet. We see people like this all the time. The problem is, how are we going to bridge the gap between getting them amongst all of the other reams of information to get them to improve their diet in pregnancy? It's really, really difficult. Case 2, 36-year-olds, fourth baby. So as I said, deficiency is progressive. And also a vegetarian. So again, their body has gone through several pregnancies, their iron stores are probably severely depleted already, and there's a small time in between the last pregnancy and this pregnancy. 30 years old, twin pregnancy. So again, your needs are increased massively. And case 4, 26-year-old, first pregnancy, history of previous iron deficiency, but are they aware of that or are they not? So diet and supplementation deficiency presents significant problems, and I'll tell you why. More and more people are on restricted diets. So as I said, actually getting from the diet what they need in pregnancy can be incredibly difficult. Once a pregnant woman is deficient, diet alone cannot and will not replenish levels. So if you have somebody that already has a questionable iron store, then they are almost guaranteed to become deficient throughout the pregnancy. Ferritin stores will be exhausted, and that's not just about their pregnancy, that's about postnatal and recovery, and that's hugely important. We don't want women just to have a healthy pregnancy, we want them to have a very good fourth trimester and a healthy recovery period. Women may become deficient in between booking and recheck. So if you're not checking ferritin stores, you have somebody that meets all the thresholds and seems fine, but has a poor diet. How do we bridge the gap and make sure that in between 12 weeks and their third trimester that they haven't become severely deficient? It's hard. So supplementation, so traditional supplements, what's good about them they're low in cost, and they're readily available. But what are the problems with them? Huge side effects, huge GI issues. How many women have you spoken to that take an iron supplement, constipated, makes them feel really unwell, increases their nausea? If you have somebody that has an associated problem, then they're increasing their constipation. And the big problem with all of this is then non-compliance. So it doesn't really matter how cheap a product is and how readily available. If we can't actually encourage women to take it, then it's utterly pointless, because the problems all still exist. And we all know self-disclosure and non-compliance are big issues in clinic. Women actually telling you that they're not taking something is quite rare. And that's fair enough. We're busy clinicians, but how do we make it better? How do we make it easier for the women in our care? So also, interestingly, the bioavailability. So when iron is taken as a supplement, the problem is that with lots of the recommended iron supplements, they reach the tummy and the stomach acids pretty much destroy most of them. So you could have a tablet that has 100 milligrams of iron, but it actually has only 10% that is available, and of that bioavailability, how much of it is actually absorbed? And that is the big issue. So the bioavailability amongst them varies hugely, and all supplements are not created equally. You can absolutely have somebody drinking a liquid supplement, but actually what iron are they actually getting from it? So they're spending money thinking that they're doing it right, but are they actually getting any benefit out of it at all, except an upset stomach? Iron is absorbed, unlike other things, not through the stomach mucosa, but it's attached to a DMT1 transporter. So for it to last and actually be absorbed properly, you need to be at the duodenum. So it needs to have survived the stomach. So that takes me to why I'm a fan of active iron. The difference is, I took it when I was pregnant myself, and I recommend it to my clients. And I'll be very honest about that. For me, it's a game changer in how we can actually allow women to take something that is going to make their pregnancy easier, that is going to make them at far less risk of developing a deficiency, and is going to allow them to have a healthier and well pregnancy. With regards absorption, although if you look at the pack you think it only has 17 milligrams, because it's coated in something that basically protects it within the stomach acid, all of that is available and is absorbed, which is kind of amazing. The gut damage then is far less, because obviously it isn't irritating your stomach. And the side effects. So in a study, 9 out of 10 users reported no side effects, which is kind of amazing with regards to anything that we would advise anyone to take. And long before, I am being sponsored obviously by Active Iron, but long before that, I really believe in this product. I believe in it for lots of different reasons. I know personally and with my clients that it makes a massive difference. And if we can have something that means that they're going to be compliant, that they're going to have a healthy pregnancy, that they're not going to become deficient, I think the good parts of that far outweigh the challenges. So, my conclusions. Iron deficiency in pregnancy presents wide-ranging issues, which I hope I've covered at least in part. More guidance and more information is needed for women, but also for us as midwives and healthcare practitioners in what we're actually saying and how we're, I suppose, allowing people to understand that you can take all the different supplements, but if they're not the right supplementation, and it's going to make you unwell. More research on the cost effectiveness. Obviously, some supplements are cheaper than others. They're going to be more popular because it's more cost effective. But if something is cheaper but not being taken at all, then what is the point? Early intervention to encourage maintenance, and this seems to be coming through in a lot of the evidence. If we can have maintenance so that we have a consistent maintenance, so we're not even going near an actual deficiency, then it means that people can take a small amount more often, and basically, we don't have to cure anything because the problem never arises. So early intervention to encourage maintenance of iron throughout pregnancy, and it may preclude the need for much more expensive, risky, uncomfortable treatments. Worst case scenario being the iron infusions, which have a huge amount of problems, and even blood transfusions down the line. A more woman-centred, holistic approach at all of the care that we do, and I know that everyone here is so passionate about women-centred care, but that has to be the core. How can we make things easier for the women within our care? How can we make their pregnancies better and ultimately their health and well-being? And if that's at the core of all of our practice, then you really can't go wrong. Now, any questions? Yes?
If you don't mind asking.
Yeah, of course. Yes. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Hi. So the first of the questions was if a lady, I have found it really good with women in my clinic to the point that it's come up by, say, like 1 deciliter, 1 gram per deciliter of the hemoglobin. But some ladies do need, say, a double dose.
Yes.
And would you recommend that it's given 2 together, or 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening?
Yeah, so the recommendation would be, the way absorption works is that the best time would take 1 in the morning and then take 1 in the evening. Because you're not running into the issues like constipation, nausea, it's not going to affect the sleeping part. So if they need to be double dosed, then 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening would be recommended.
Okay, great. I think we hadn't been doing that. So that's good to know. The second thing I wanted to ask you was, I have looked in a few chemists for the active iron, and I see when they're side by side there's a comparable price range, so they could vary from $16.99 to $22.99. Now I do know that the active iron for women, they do include a B vitamin as well, I think. In the there is different
types.
So if a lady is already on Pregnacare, isn't she fine with this? Say the active iron, your 14 milligrams.
That absolutely they can. But what's brilliant about the pregnancy one is that it's 70 milligrams. So you have 121%, and that entire 70 milligrams is going to be absorbed.
Okay, brilliant.
So as opposed to another product that would have
€5 or €6.
Yeah, so another product that would have 100 milligrams, only 10% is available and possibly absorbed.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you so much for not asking mean questions. Any other questions? Yes, hi.
Hi, sorry to disturb you. I just wanted to ask, if a lady is not anemic in her first trimester, though you're talking about maybe progression of anemia, should we be encouraging our women to take active iron even though she's not anemic?
That's a huge debate at the moment. What the research is saying is that we shouldn't be advocating wide-scale supplementation, but what the evidence says is that if you take a good supplement over a long period of time throughout your entire pregnancy, your chances of becoming deficient hugely go down, basically. So it very much depends on their history, it very much depends on how receptive they are, and also, again, we're down to diet. So if somebody has a really amazing diet, then supplementation will absolutely help, but are they going to be receptive to taking supplements? And sometimes as well, people think that if they just take a pregnancy supplement, it ticks every box, whereas we know that that's not the case. So we need to be educating our women slightly better and then letting them make the decision as to what is best for them, considering all the evidence. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Goody Cole. I'm from Cork.
Lovely to meet you.
I work in an outreach clinic, an antenatal clinic, and often it's 32 weeks by the time
you would
I'm
see
seeing
people,
them.
of course.
And I often think it's a bit late, you're chasing your tail, if they're coming in with a HB of 10 point something. that's one of the issues.
Absolutely.
Is it okay to start then? I mean, obviously, it's
absolutely.
better than nothing. My second part of the question was, what about the vegan, vegetarian women who are...
Yeah, so Active Iron is suitable for vegetarians and a vegan supplement. So it's a whey protein, but it's deactivated. So it's also okay for people who are lactose intolerant. So it's a deactivated lactose, essentially. They're working on a product for vegans at the moment. But I find, and certainly in my own practice, that people are willing to slightly relax a diet during pregnancy. And if you can say to them that this will significantly improve their iron levels and their iron stores, and to help them achieve a healthier pregnancy, people can be receptive to it if it's only one thing that's not going to make them unwell. And I suppose that's what we're trying to do. In how I educate my clients, it's about doing the easiest thing that they're the most likely to continue doing to maximise the health benefits. I don't know who would agree with me, but that's what I try and do in my own practice.
It's just the 2 weeks.
Yeah, certainly, like absolutely, it will start. But again, this is not something that can be prescribed or to treat somebody who's anemic. This is very much a nutritional supplement to maximise health. Is that it? No mean questions. Thank you very much.
I was about to ask if anyone else had